The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret, a sterile cage where my life unraveled. My mother's hand, frail and cold, slipped from mine as the heart monitor flatlined, its piercing wail slicing through my chest. I was 25, alone, and drowning in a grief I couldn't name. I sat frozen on a plastic chair, staring at the floor tiles, counting their cracks to keep from screaming. That's when Julian walked in, my cousin, my opposite, my anchor. At 26, he was all easy smiles and quiet strength, his dark skin catching the dim light as he crossed the room. "Elliot," he said softly, his voice a lifeline. "I'm here. You don't have to do this alone." His hand found my shoulder, warm and steady, pulling me back from the edge of despair. We hadn't been close growing up. Julian lived in Oakland, I was in San Diego, and our lives rarely intersected beyond awkward family reunions. He was the cool cousin, confident, openly gay, with a laugh that could fill a room. I was the quiet one, always hiding behind my sketchbooks, my Mexican roots tangled with a shyness I couldn't shake. But when I called him, voice-breaking, to tell him about Mom's cancer, he didn't hesitate. He packed a bag, drove 500 miles, and moved into my tiny apartment to help me navigate the wreckage of my world. The first week was a blur of funeral plans and paperwork. Julian handled the calls I couldn't face, cooked meals I barely touched, and sat with me through nights when sleep was a stranger. His presence was a quiet revolution, turning chaos into something bearable. We'd sit on my sagging couch, sharing stories about Mom, her fierce love, her terrible cooking, her insistence on blasting salsa music at 6 a.m. Julian's laughter was a bomb, and I started to notice how his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how his hand lingered when he passed me a coffee mug. One night, as rain tapped against the windows, he found my old sketchbook under a pile of bills. "Elliot, these are incredible," he said, flipping through my drawings. Cityscapes, faces, dreams I'd never shared. His fingers traced a portrait of Mom, and his voice softened. "You've got her spirit in these lines." I blushed and used to praise, and for the first time, I felt seen. Not as the grieving son, but as me. Days turned into weeks and Julian stayed. He got a part-time gig at a local bookstore, charming customers with his quick wit, while I tried to piece myself back together. I was a graphic designer, but my freelance gigs had dried up, my focus shattered by loss. Julian pushed me to draw again, leaving pencils and paper on the kitchen table like offerings. "You've got something to say, Elliot," he'd say, his voice firm but kind. "Don't let it stay locked inside." One afternoon, we drove to Torrey Pines State Reserve, seeking solace in the wild cliffs and crashing waves. The air was sharp with salt, the sky a bruised purple. Julian stood at the edge, his jacket flapping in the wind, and I sketched him without thinking. His profile sharp against the horizon, his strength a quiet defiance. When he turned and caught me, his smile was different, softer, like he'd seen something in me I hadn't yet named. That night, back at the apartment, the air felt charged. We were on the couch, a half-empty pizza box between us, when Julian reached for my hand. His touch was tentative, a question. My heart raced, not with fear but with something I couldn't place. Something alive. "Elliot," he murmured, "I know you're hurting, but I see you. I've always seen you." His words hung there, raw and unguarded, and I realized I was holding my breath. I wasn't gay. At least I'd never thought I was. My life had been a straight line, girlfriends, safe choices, a world I understood. But Julian's hand in mine felt like truth, like a door I'd never dared to open. I didn't pull away. Instead, I leaned closer, my voice barely a whisper. "What are we doing, Julian?" His eyes searched mine, and for a moment, the world was just us. Two cousins, two souls, teetering on the edge of something dangerous and beautiful. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting stripes across Julian's sleeping face on the couch. I watched him, my sketchbook open, pencil frozen mid-stroke. What had happened last night wasn't just a moment. It was a shift, a crack in the foundation of who I thought I was. I slipped out to the kitchen, brewing coffee to steady my nerves. The memory of his hand in mine burned, not with shame but with a strange, aching clarity. I'd spent my life avoiding questions about myself, hiding behind my art, my grief, my safe routines. But Julian, he saw through it all. And now, I couldn't unsee the way my pulse quickened when he smiled. He stirred, stretching with a yawn that broke the silence. "Morning, Elliot," he said, his voice warm but cautious, like he was testing the air between us. I handed him a mug, our fingers brushing, and the spark was there again, undeniable, terrifying. "About last night," he started, but I cut him off, my words tumbling out. "I don't know what it means, Julian. I just know I don't want you to leave." His eyes softened, and he nodded, like he understood the war raging inside me. We fell into a rhythm, but it was different now. Every glance, every casual touch, carried weight. We'd cook dinner together, elbows bumping in my cramped kitchen, and I'd catch myself staring at the curve of his jaw. He'd tease me about my terrible taste in music, blasting his indie playlists, and I'd laugh harder than I had in months. But there were moments when the air grew heavy, when our eyes locked too long, and I'd turn away, afraid of what I might say. One evening, we walked to a local diner, neon lights buzzing in the San Diego dusk. Over greasy burgers and milkshakes, Julian opened up about his life. His coming out at 18, the family's mixed reactions, the boyfriends who'd broken his heart. "I never felt like I belonged anywhere," he said, stirring his shake. "But being here with you, it feels like home." His words hit me like a wave, and I wanted to reach across the table to tell him he was my home too. But fear clamped my mouth shut. Back at the apartment, I showed him a new sketch, a portrait of us on the cliff, our silhouettes blending into the sunset. "This is how I see you," I said, my voice shaking. He studied it, his fingers tracing the lines, and when he looked at me, his eyes were raw with emotion. "Elliot, this is us." He stepped closer, and I didn't move away. His hand cupped my face, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. But he stopped, pulling back with a shaky breath. "We can't," he whispered. "Not like this. Not when you're still figuring it out." His words stung, but they were right. I was a mess of grief and confusion, and Julian deserved more than a half-formed truth. Still, the space between us felt alive, a pull I couldn't ignore. Over the next few days, I threw myself into my art, sketching him obsessively. His laugh, his hands, the way he moved. Each drawing was a confession I couldn't voice. One night, a storm rolled in, thunder shaking the windows. Julian was reading on the couch, his glasses slipping down his nose, and I couldn't take it anymore. I sat beside him, closer than I needed to, and said, "I'm scared, Julian, but I'm not scared of you." He closed his book, his gaze steady. "Then what are you scared of?" he asked. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. "Of what I feel when I'm with you." He didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. I leaned in, my lips brushing his, tentative, electric. It was my first kiss with a man, my first real kiss in months, and it felt like waking up. His hands found my face, gentle but sure, and for a moment, the world was perfect. But then he pulled back, his breath uneven. Elliot, we're cousins. It's complicated. The word hit like a slap, grounding me in a reality I'd ignored. The word cousins hung in the air, heavy as the storm outside. Julian's eyes searched mine, pleading for understanding, but all I felt was the sting of truth. We'd crossed a line, and there was no undoing it. I stood, pacing the small living room, my hands shaking. I know, I said, my voice hoarse. I know it's wrong, but it doesn't feel wrong. Julian ran a hand over his face, his calm unraveling. Elliot, I feel it too, but we can't just ignore what this means. Family, society, they won't understand. His words were a mirror, reflecting my own fears, but they couldn't erase the way his kiss had burned through me. For days, we tiptoed around each other. I buried myself in work, landing a small freelance gig designing a logo for a local cafe. Julian spent more time at the bookstore, his shifts stretching late. But the apartment was too small to avoid the tension. Every shared glance, every accidental brush, was a reminder of what we'd done and what we wanted. I hated how much I wanted it. One afternoon, I found him on the balcony, staring at the city skyline. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded, his shoulders tense. I never meant for this to happen, he said. I came here to help you, not this. His honesty gutted me, but it also lit a fire. Then why does it feel so right? I asked, stepping closer. He didn't pull away, but his eyes were stormy. Because we're both lost, Elliot, and we're finding each other in the wreckage. His words broke something in me. I grabbed his hand, pulling him inside, away from the world's judgment. I don't care about the rules, I said, my voice fierce. I care about you. He kissed me then, hard and desperate, like he was drowning and I was air. It was reckless, forbidden, but it was ours. We didn't talk about the future. We lived in stolen moments, late-night talks, shared coffee, sketches I drew of him when he wasn't looking. But the weight of our secret grew. At a family barbecue hosted by my aunt in La Jolla, whispers followed us. My cousin Maria, sharp-eyed and nosy, cornered me by the grill. What's going on with you and Julian? She asked, her tone half curious, half accusing. I froze, my heart pounding. Nothing, I lied, but her smirk said she didn't believe me. That night, back at the apartment, I told Julian about Maria. His face darkened. We can't keep this up, Elliot. If they find out, he didn't finish, but I knew. Our family was close-knit, traditional. A scandal like this could tear us apart. I wanted to argue, to fight for us, but doubt crept in. Was this love, or was it grief masquerading as something more? The next day, Julian got a call from his old boss in Oakland, offering him a full-time job managing a community arts program. It's a good opportunity, he said, his voice flat. Maybe it's time for me to go. My stomach dropped. You're leaving? I asked, hating how small I sounded. He looked at me, his eyes raw. I don't want to, but maybe it's what's best. For both of us. I didn't sleep that night. The thought of losing him, of losing this, felt like losing Mom all over again. But he was right. We were cousins, bound by blood and history, and no amount of love could rewrite that. Still, I couldn't let him go without a fight. I woke to the sound of Julian packing, his duffel bag half full on the living room floor. The sight hit me like a punch. You're really doing this? I asked, my voice cracking. He paused, his hands still on a folded shirt. Elliot, I don't know how to stay without hurting you more. I crossed the room, grabbing his arm. You're not hurting me. You're saving me. My words were raw, desperate, but true. He'd pulled me through the darkest months of my life, and now he was slipping away. He looked at me, his eyes glistening. I love you, Elliot, but us, it's not something the world will let us have. His confession broke me open. I loved him too, not just as family but as something deeper, something I'd never felt before. I pulled him close, kissing him with a fierceness that scared me. He kissed me back, his hands gripping my shirt, but then he pushed away, his breath ragged. We have to stop, he said, his voice breaking. We have to. I didn't argue, couldn't. Instead, I poured my heart into my sketchbook, drawing him one last time. A portrait of him laughing, his eyes bright with the life he'd given back to me. I left it on the coffee table, a silent plea for him to stay. That night, we sat in silence, the weight of our choices suffocating us. The next day, I drove him to the bus station. The San Diego air was thick with summer heat, the kind that made everything feel heavy. He hugged me, his arms lingering, and whispered, "You're stronger than you think, Elliot. Don't forget that." I wanted to beg him to stay, to tell him we could find a way, but the words stuck in my throat. He boarded the bus, and I watched it disappear, taking a piece of me with it. The apartment felt hollow without him. I threw myself into my art, channeling my pain into every line. My freelance gigs picked up, and I started a series of drawings inspired by our time together. Cliffs, sunsets, hands almost touching. They were raw, honest, and people noticed. A local gallery offered me a small show, my first real break. But every sketch felt like a letter to Julian, unsent. Months passed, and I heard from him sporadically. Texts about his new job, his life in Oakland. He was happy, or so he said, but his messages felt guarded. I dated a few people, women mostly, trying to move on, but none of them were him. I started questioning everything. My sexuality, my identity, the rules I'd lived by. Julian had opened a door, and I couldn't close it. One evening, I got a package in the mail. A small canvas, painted with bold, vibrant strokes. It was us, standing on that cliff at Torrey Pines, our silhouettes against a blazing sunset. A note was tucked inside. You showed me how to see myself. Now show the world who you are. Julian. I cried then, not out of sadness but gratitude. He'd given me more than love. He'd given me myself. The gallery show was a quiet triumph. My drawings hung under soft lights, each one a piece of my heart, a story of loss and love and discovery. Friends and strangers mingled, their voices a hum, but I felt Julian's absence like a missing limb. I stood by the cliff sketch, the one that started it all, when Maria approached, her eyes softer than at the barbecue. "These are beautiful, Elliot," she said. "I didn't know you had this in you." I smiled, unsure if she saw the truth in the lines, the love I couldn't name. "Thanks," I said, my voice steady. Someone helped me find it. That night, I walked to the beach, the same one where Julian and I had watched the waves. The stars were sharp, the air cool against my skin. I thought about him, about us, about the line we'd crossed and the one we'd drawn to protect each other. Loving him had been reckless, forbidden, but it had also been real. It had woken me up, forced me to face myself in ways I never would have alone. I didn't regret it. Not the kiss, not the nights we spent too close, not the way he'd changed me. But I understood now that love wasn't just about holding on. It was about letting go, too. Julian had given me the strength to rebuild, to create, to live. And I'd given him something too. A home, even if just for a while. I pulled out my phone and typed a message. Thank you for everything. I'm okay now. I hope you are too. I hit send, knowing he might not reply, knowing it didn't matter. Love wasn't ownership. It was freedom. Months later, I got an email from a gallery in Oakland. They'd seen my work online and wanted to feature it in a group show. I drove up, nervous but hopeful. And there he was, Julian, standing by my sketches, his smile as bright as I remembered. We didn't touch, didn't cross that line again, but we talked for hours, laughing like we used to. He was proud of me and I of him. We'd found our way back to family, to friendship, to something pure and true. The world might not understand what we'd been, but we did, and that was enough. As I drove back to San Diego, the Pacific stretching endless beside me, I felt whole. Not because I had all the answers, but because I'd learned to ask the questions. Julian had shown me that love, in all its messy forms, was the courage to keep going, to keep creating, to keep being.